Yo, what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder. And if I'm a little groggy today, I've started my juicing, so trying to cut down on some poundage if you feels me. With that in mind, today we are going to be touching on a follow-up to NOIR. What has been happening as of late? Why is this happening? And what does the future hold in store for this alliance and this group and this leadership? We're going to be showing you a lot of screenshots. We're going to be diving into a number of things today. But as always, and I want to be very clear here, as I usually am, is that no hate towards anyone. I very much like to approach these things from an educational standpoint, which is what's happening and then what can we learn from it? What can we take away from this? Can we make this educational to where anyone who may be in a situation like this, whether it's in Call of Dragons or another kingdom builder, can you learn something? Can you find a positive? Can you find something constructive? Can you find maybe a warning sign, maybe some tail lights that are blinking here and there on, okay, well, maybe we need to pause and address these things so that way we don't potentially fall or succumb to similar things that may happen. So, as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us some because it helps out a lot. Let's dive right in. There is going to be a lot. Okay, I'm going to start off by reading feedback. And then we're going to go to images, and I'm going to share you my thoughts on them. So I want to be very clear as well, is that I reached out. This kind of, you can see here, I started doing this on the 19th of November. So it's been maybe about a little less than 3 weeks that I started getting some feedback from players that used to be in NOIR, some that might still be there. And this is members, I believe one officer. I had even reached out to the ex-officer team that used to be there, and I think 2 people gave me a no comment, which I respect, and then the others I just don't think replied, except for one that did. And here we're going to be showing you their thoughts, and I'm just going to give you my reaction to it, and then we'll get into the screens. First one is 30 plus quit, 30 plus kicked, some are staying, will migrate later, or are being piloted, recruiting early on. If you knew them, then you would be good to join. This kind of talking about that process. Process has improved recently, though. Again, so a nod there. Last season hurt even though we won. This season activity dropped from the beginning. And last season, that was the TFS season, right, with NOIR and others. Past 2 seasons, and especially this one, having to fight against more T5 or high-tech players, so harder for those to enjoy by having a better account for more spending. This is a very interesting line because this goes into, if you remember, what Gunn said in his video about is he leaving NOIR or not, talking about this idea that players who are spending, some of them, not all, but some people that fall into this mold of just wanting to be able to always be stronger and always have some form of an advantage over other players, and that's what is fun and enjoyable for them. Maybe not so much when they're on even or even-ish playing fields, where maybe they have to work harder and the true skill comes more into play at that point. So just interesting that a former member of NOIR, or I should say a former and or current member of NOIR, had this to say. Some NOIR and leadership are great people. Overall was a good experience. So again, enjoyed the experience there in the Alliance. And this isn't, like I said, I want to be very clear here that anyone that has given me anything to quote, pretty much everyone for the most part wants to be anonymous, but I'm taking and or paraphrasing what they had said. So it doesn't matter to me if they say something that may be perceived as positive and or not positive. I'm going to showcase that and leave the integrity up there intact. Next one. We have is leadership was not right this KVK. That just finished. And these are just some of the questions I asked, right? Were you recruited? I just wanted to put that in there, right? So if you see other answers, you might be like, okay, well, where's that answer coming from? These are some of the questions I'd asked some people that had reached out. Were you, and I want to be very clear here, like the majority of all these people reached out, with the exception of, I think, one, or the officers that I had reached out to, which is people that were reaching out to me. What was that process like? How much vetting did they do on you? Did you feel they made an effort to bring in players that had a higher percentage chance to stay active and fight? And then how long have you been playing with NOIR? So he said he was recruited. A member helped me get in. So that's kind of similar to what we heard of before. A lot of vetting. With Peak being an R4, she manipulated people into looking at one player at least. As a creep, she was the main reason why at least one was kicked from the Alliance. I don't really know how that affected how much vetting that happened. So I don't know. And again, I don't know if we'll come back to that at a later point. But yeah, someone said that. No, 4, which I think was, oh yeah, did you feel the chance to be fine? But I guess that was where the vetting came in. Maybe she was in charge of that at some point for the recruiting. Number 4, did you feel an effort was made to bring in people, high percentage, to where they could stay active and fight? This person says no. And how long does this person? We were playing 2 seasons. Next one. This is probably going to be a little bit of a longer one, but someone said, had friends within the war, a little rep established, did not go through standard recruiting process. So again, similar, third person already to say not going through a standard recruiting process, probably just ended up getting, a little like tap on maybe knowing someone or someone helped them get in, whatever that may have looked like. Expectations laid out were clear. This was very important because I've ran recruiting departments before, and this is something that I always find is kind of hit or miss on the department, where are you, or the person who's just the point of contact or the recruiting lead, are you being upfront and transparent about what your actual current situation is in the kingdom, in the alliance, and people that are coming in versus people that are going out, along with what are your kingdom standards, what are your goals, what are your rules, your regulations, etc. Like just really kind of putting everything out there up front. So even though they said expectations laid out were clear, we don't know what level of clear that is. But I did just want to put that in there because this is their experience. Met them, and Alliance met players. Some players wished for more action and for the wins. Believes Satoru and team made the best decision. Okay, but this is important. There's 2 sides here. The first one is that some players did wish for more action for the wins. This goes together with some piece of feedback we heard earlier where someone was stating that, look, we do want to be able to fight more and hopefully have a little bit more engagement. And then the other part of that was the person saying, which I guess kind of slightly ties into that, on saying like, yeah, man, we just want to be able to have advantages and, kind of be ahead of others when we're out there fighting. And if we're not, it just kind of loses some of that engagement. And then the second part, believes Satoru and team made the best decision. And again, that's important because this is this person's experience. Similarly, what someone else said is that they had a great experience in NOIR. Next one. When NOIR lost behemoth races in recent season, activity drop was apparent. IRL and game changes, right? So there you go. That when they're losing behemoth races in recent season, activity drop. Now, this is interesting because I guess it just depends on how much you value behemoth races. I guess to me, when I think about this, one of my favorite animes is called The King's Avatar. For those some of you that might be familiar with this show, it's basically an esport anime that takes you into kind of like this MMO world of PvP and PvE. And there's aspects in the first season of the show where they focus a little bit more on like PvE achievements. And the fact is there's a group of people that really value that, regardless if they're in a PvP-related alliance or not. And so I am curious on, if you're someone watching, how much do you value something like this? Behemoth races, do you feel like if you're losing those, or like, is there a difference between not placing first in a behemoth race versus you had a great showing and you still put up a great time even if you weren't first? Do you really treat that as kind of do you take that as like, if it's not first, you're last kind of an approach? I'm really curious there, because I could understand if, you're a top alliance and maybe you're consistently placing on the bottom of those boards, or you're not putting up solid times or respectable times, then okay, maybe that would factor into some general activity. But to say that you're placing second or third where the times are really high, and or you're still meeting your previous best times or making better times, part of me just doesn't feel like that would be such a huge factor, or even a small one at all. But I'd love to know. Next one. When NOIR, IRL and game changes factored into my drop-off. So this is this player's personal experience. Bastions took too long to burn, and 24-hour around-the-clock warfare I am not unaccustomed to. Essentially meaning that he's familiar with it, or she is familiar with it in this case. I should just say it is familiar, or they. There we go. Though felt as if I didn't give all my time, I would fall behind or not meeting Alliance standard. So this feeling of maybe high activity, maybe to a degree, depending on the person and you coming in, could maybe be unreasonable levels of activity. Expectations, I mean, we've heard stories like this as well before. So this isn't like out of the ordinary. Then we have here, players... would fall. Players are being zeroed, though only if they have quit and haven't told anyone, quit or do not migrate out, bad blood issues, or have not responded to inquiries. So this is one of those questions I believe I asked about, well, hey, are people being, because we had heard reports in 5, which again is standard for other kingdoms as well. I want to be very clear there. It's not like 5 and NOIR are the only people out there zeroing and attacking people. But the fact that they reached out, if this is really important, right, where it says we have not responded to inquiries, I respect that because I think it's very important that you're taking time to reach out to all the players. Now, again, I don't know all the details, so I don't know if all the players were reached out to. I don't know how they were reached out to. There's a lot of wiggle room, or I should say gray area there. But this person was aware that however many people were reached out to, and there was efforts made, so it wasn't just purely okay, we're going to start immediately rallying you and kicking you and zeroing you. And if that's the case, then again, I applaud that because I think that's a good way to go about it, where you're giving people the courtesy, the professional courtesy of giving them a heads up and allowing for them some time to respond. And then, if it just ends up being the case where they don't want to migrate out, they're not willing to support or kind of help that endeavor, or you on your side are unwilling to assist them in maybe migrating out in any capacity, right? Then maybe after a period of time, whatever you may deem, it may be appropriate then to go ahead and, start lowering if you feel like they're going to be factoring into the next KVK. Kind of sucks to say, but I do think that there are right and wrong ways to go about doing that. Being the number one alliance in-game added some pressure, spending pressure, activity pressure, no life pressure. This is so important, and I appreciate this person saying this because I am very much of the belief that there is an act. Because I had asked, I said, "Hey, did you find any pressure or any from anywhere that applied to you being in the number one alliance and the number one kingdom for a period of time?" Because for me, I just feel like when I'm doing kingdom building, and if I'm going into a kingdom with any of my projects that I've done now across 3 different games that have all had varied levels of success and have had varied levels of periods that they've lasted, with at least me being there, one of the things I've always noticed as a trend is that when you are the number one alliance, and to a degree when you're the number one player, when you're the number one kingdom, there are different levels of stress and different levels of pressure that are applied to you. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. When you're the number one alliance in a kingdom, you will get messaged and you will get asked questions that you probably would have never expected. And some of those could look like an alliance that isn't even on the radar, asking you for help, asking, "Hey, can you help us go capture this behemoth?" Or, "Hey, can you give us some territory so we can build over here?" Or, "Hey, it's not fair that we're getting attacked. Can you come and help us?" Like, I'm talking anything that you could maybe think of or not think of, you can get asked this stuff. And I'd be curious to hear some stories from any of you out there, like if you've been the number one alliance, the number one player. I've had people reach out to the number one player just saying, "Hey, can you come join our alliance just so you can help us capture this?" And this could be like a rank 10 alliance in the game, and they're just barely active. I mean, it is, I don't want to say it's baffling, but it's very insightful. It's very eye-opening when you see these things happen. And just to kind of add some context to that form of pressure. Also went on to say they spent around $27,000 so far. Some players have spent $1K. I don't know if this was $1K a day just on upkeep. I'm forgetting exactly if this was $1K or not. But again, I'm assuming it's not $1K total, right? So it probably is $1K a day or $1K a week just on upkeep. Would like to thank NOIR for being a top-notch alliance, taking me in, and the friends I've made. So again, giving shout-outs, giving the flowers where they're due. We get the next part here where they say the time commitment at the highest tier of gameplay is excessive, especially if you work more than 8 hours a day or have a busy home life. The lower limit monetary cost to keep up is wildly expensive these days. For example, the wheel event happens bi-weekly in most situations, costing you $185 for 100 spins. Forge of Light events also happen bi-weekly, usually costing a total of $185 times 3, since you need to purchase the bundle 3 times to hit pity to get 100% guarantee of the new artifact or artifact of your choice. These 2 events alone will run an upper end player $1,480 a month. Now, I love these stats. This is actually something I really appreciate, this player being willing to share kind of what their expenditures are in the game and what they look like on a one-time and a consistent basis, because this is actually something I've been thinking of doing. And if you're a top player or you're someone who's kind of on the higher end of what you may spend, whether that's just on progression, upkeep, maintenance, etc., I may be reaching out to you soon, because I've been wanting to reach out to like a number of the top players in the game, just for those that are willing to share, of course anonymously, but I'd love to almost kind of hear like what your experience was and like how much did you spend to get to T5, maybe how quick did you do it, what are the, what are you spending on consistently now, and has that changed? Like, did you spend on different things in the mid game compared to the end game? What's your upkeep look like? What areas are you spending in, and why specifically? If it's to stay ahead, if it's just on maintenance, like, these are things that I would really love to ask. So again, I really appreciate this person taking the time. With that in mind, these two events where I won an upper player, and that's without the $2.99 daily chest and the 2 monthly bundles, right? So obviously it starts increasing. Man, that's a decent chunk of change. And this is kind of more general feedback that they had given me too as well. The introduction of bastions has slowed combat down dramatically. More often than not, bastions are utilized as the only means of progression between alliances of similar power or activity. Not to mention the devs' heavy bias towards wanting to introduce more ways to kill people's troops, which directly impacts a player's free healing capacity. So again, this is not the first time we've heard about bastions. Now, again, we know that they have addressed this from recent dev feedback, where they are essentially going to make them a little bit faster to kill, so they're not there as long, or I should say the burning if it was for the HP in life. But in short, making it so they're not there for as long as they are currently. Next portion, the development cycle has seemed to slow down. What I mean is that we're seeing the same recycled maps with some tweaks, the same behemoths with some tweaks, the same events with some tweaks. It appears to me that the developers have begun to either slow down on the innovation or have started to get complacent with the success the game has seen. And this is interesting, once again, because we've heard how, and this is something that they addressed, right, in that recent big community favored dev feedback column, on that they are going to be adding more events in Home Kingdom. Now again, will that be enough? How many will it be? What kind of events will they? How will those be set up? And is it something that the community will gravitate towards? Will it kind of calm that, or will it quell that storm a little bit? But I do think this is spot on, at least when it comes to when we talk about the amount of events that the game had started with, the amount that they were adding, and that they've been adding since release, and kind of where we're at now. It does feel a little bit like we're stagnating, like we could get more events. And I almost wonder if it would be nice to kind of hear what kind of events people would like to see, and maybe a dev feedback where they an answer and they say, well, hey, here are some of the most requested pieces of of events requests and ideas that people have shared. Right, just to kind of show like ones that maybe stuck out to them. I don't know, something like that. Next person we get kind of gives us a list of like pros and cons for them being in the war. When I first joined the war, up until the last season, SOS2, the elite activity, knowledge, and dedication of all players was exceptional. It was a fantastic environment for playing the game competitively, surrounded by like-minded individuals. The shared goal of not just being one of the best, but the best alliance in Call of Dragons was clear among both leaders and members. This collective ambition created advantages at every level. Leadership consistently created optimal build plans. Recruitment focused on active, dedicated players who fit seamlessly within our team. Positive vibes and a sense of community made it a great place to enjoy the game. And then we get to some of the cons. However, over time, some issues became more apparent. The removal of 40 players at season's end. The set removal of 40 players caused more problems than it solved. It led to frustration, especially since it didn't account for time zone differences, affecting coordination for fights, builds, and events. No friends in the war. The phrase was often repeated by the R5, and players were removed without prior notice or communication, which created a fear-driven atmosphere where no one knew who would be kicked next. Now, one of the things on this was I remember covering the war, and we showed off a mail that said something to the effect of 30 to 40 players every season will be removed. And I don't know, again, it was only one mail I saw, so I don't know if there was pre-text to that, if there was post-text to that. Was there kind of a foundation email where they said, you know, anything that I guess helped out by not making it seem like, okay, well, 30 or 40 players are going to get kicked every season, and it's just kind of this idea of maybe putting that fear, or hopefully maybe trying to instill that drive in players in the Alliance to participate, to engage, and compete. Otherwise, if you're at the bottom 40, but at the same time, what happens if your alliance is completely full of active people, right? Then what, you're still going to remove the bottom 40 people? Or what happens if 20 out of those bottom 40 are active, but the bottom 20 out of 40 are not active? Like, there are obviously some intangibles there, right, and X factors. Okay, So we have fights builds. No friends in the war. We have arbitrary removals. The fixed number of removals didn't target inactive or underperforming players effectively, leading to confusion and resentment. And again, this is an officer. Bipolar leadership. While the Alliance was publicly run as a leadership team, decisions were ultimately made by the R5. Speaking out against these decisions often resulted in public shaming or removal, creating an atmosphere of fear. So we have some advantages and disadvantages. This one goes into activity, high levels of activity prior to last season, camaraderie, strong teamwork and unity in early seasons, positive environment, generally motivating and supportive before the last season. Disadvantages, cutthroat removals, unpredictable arbitrary removal process. Leadership decisions were often erratic and not always well received. Focus on power over activity, more emphasis on power levels than genuine activity or contributions. Oh, that's the walking going out. Okay, now let's get to probably the next thing that is going to take a little bit, but I do want to read this because someone had wrote this up, and this is kind of more of their summary. This is almost kind of like, shout out to McBoo, or to Boo, who kind of did his, he used to do like his general summary consensus, but this was one that was written up by an officer, I believe. Whether they're there or not will remain to be seen. Saying, joining the war after S2+, KVK with Dusk Dawn, the war versus TFS, FS, TDR, everything was amazing. Organization was strong, high morale. This is the Fallen Ancient Power header. Overall, just good vibes between everyone. This positivity continued on until changes became more frequent, decisions became questionable, conversations became taboo. And the overall feeling that NOIR was the best alliance to be a part of in the game was replaced with a feeling of dread every time one logged into the game. Feel like I'm reading a scary novel. This dread was seen from two different but extremely similar occasions. Both involved a leader in the war and a new player. While I will not enter the first occasion in much detail, others have more or better information regarding. The second occasion caused the internal combustion of what we knew as NOIR. And this kind of gets into what some of those turning point, right? Now we're kind of getting into some of the turning point. We laid some foundation, and now we're talking about like, well, what really happened with people wanting to leave, the old leadership team leaving, etc. Right? This kind of gets in, I believe, to some of that. Leadership problems, a turning point. Near the end of SOS1 KVK, TFS NOIR, EIS, BXS will admit the activity in NOIR was not as dominant as expected. This can be partially attributed to it being the end of the season, along with the wave of defensive towers built behind the EIS passes, where NOIR was unable to penetrate the defenses built, rather than brainstorming options or different strategies to push through said defenses. Our plan turned into just constantly throwing ourselves against the wall, resulting in a majority of players losing interest in contributing to this operation. At the conclusion of a victorious yet less than satisfactory season, standard operations from Satoru were carried out. The removal of players from the Alliance. There was never any standardization to this operation. Players were removed by Satoru based on what we can assume is a personal judgment. Some cases were justified based on merits being lower than what was expected, while other removed players had questionable reasons as to why they were removed. This kind of reminds me a little bit, now that I'm reading this, of the Snowman situation that we covered a while back. The Home Kingdom, shift, and new leadership. This positions in the next stage of the story, the Home Kingdom experience, new leadership was introduced, another personal decision of the R5 Satoru with no input from the current members of the leadership team. This was never really an issue until we started to notice an animosity between one of the new R4 members and a long-time proven R4. After conversations unfolded in private messages, this long-time contributor of the NOIR leadership team migrated to the up-and-coming Power Alliance Echo. This departure caused a majority of the remaining leadership team, as well as members of the Alliance, to talk in both public chats and background conversations about what could have possibly caused this to happen. Was it a personal decision to start fresh, or was it something more? Shortly after this situation, another prominent figure in the NOIR leadership team stepped down from leadership due to Satoru being in a constant defensive state, which was seen in how he was relentlessly berating ideas and opinions brought up. The rumor behind these influential leadership members suddenly leaving involved a constant, the new R4 member, Peak, Rumors around how this new R4 member is e-dating the R5 Satoru and was only promoted due to that relationship began, and while we cannot with the utmost certainty claim that the rumors are true, it's very clear, again, this is just this person's opinion, it would provide a reasoning while the sudden changes and questionable decisions being carried out. Keep in mind, this is all being discovered and questioned from Home Kingdom to the early days of the SOS2 KVK with NOIR, GG, RK, NTS, Echo, FG, BXS. Next stage, rising tensions and leadership dysfunction. As we continued through the KVK, the apparent relationship between this R4 and R5 became much more noticeable. While it's normal that a new member of leadership would want to assist and participate in conversations, and there's nothing against that whatsoever, that makes sense to me, another set of eyes is always a good thing. How it was being conducted seemed very much more that this new R4 thought they had a massive influence on everything being conducted. At the time, I personally brushed it off as maybe that's just how they communicate, nothing more. What was not appreciated in this situation was being told what to do by someone who really didn't understand the tasks that each R4 operated, especially in this situation where there was an operating system in place. In response to this demand, it was simply stated that there was a process in place for it and that they didn't need to be involved in the way that they did. Rather than respond the usual, okay, no worries, it was ignored, and not even an hour later, the same demand was made. This was when I personally noticed something was weird going on and started conversing with others about the situation. In addition to the weird behavior taking place in leadership, the constant mood swings, bipolar activity, and the inability to accept or work with criticism from the R5 ramped up significantly. It was obvious whenever a comment that was either against or just challenged the R5's initial decision was made, an immediate personal offense taken by the R5. What could be a simple suggestion to the idea would be twisted around in a way where it's obvious that the R5 believed that he was the only person who is capable of creating a successful plan of action. With regards to the bipolarness and mood swings seen in the R5's behavior, one moment he can be a great, super nice, funny guy and then instantly flip the switch into a hateful character speaking down on anyone as if they were beneath him or worthless. Speaking in direct messages, he could be a friendly and accepting person. Yet when speaking in a group, or it's just a completely different person, and a group is just a completely different person, while these behaviors were noticeable prior to the promotion of this new R4, they escalated significantly once this new R4 was introduced. And this is the last page. And then third to the last header or title. Personal experience, the breaking point. Over the next few weeks, it became more and more apparent that something was happening behind closed doors. Jokes made in chat or questions asked that could ever so faintly be connected towards this R4 were followed up in a direct message from the R5 asking if everything was okay, which based on the past experiences with the R5 didn't make any sense. During my 10 months of being an R4 in the war, I was only contacted in direct messages by the R5 a handful of times. During the last weeks of being an R4, I was contacted 3 times. My demotion from R4 in the war, while I can and will agree that I was not as active during the time due to starting an internship and being unable to play as much, there are no hard feelings there, and I completely understand. And if this was the actual reason, I was demoted for not building during the workday in a Save Zone 3. This was shocking, as it really didn't correlate with anything that has happened prior in the Alliance or leadership, causing the response of asking others if they had any idea and sharing the screenshot messages of the demotion message, resulting in the situation becoming much worse, which was not ever intended. Looking deeper into the situations at play, it was stated by this new R4 peak that she felt like I was constantly coming at her as I was friends with one of the R4s who stepped down due to her promotion, stating that now it's only him left, which caused me to believe the rumors that Peak was influencing Sato's decisions and potentially e-dating. The fatal flaw, a toxic, and I want to point out, there's nothing so far that indicates anything, and it doesn't really matter to me who's dating who. The thing that I would find important to really focus on is, well, are there any screenshots that show that there was any favoritism, that there was anything that was said by said officer to other players or to the people in question that line up directly and or Are there screenshots of Satoru's behavior prior to this person joining in kind of normal conversations versus similar conversations after? That's kind of some of the ways that you would try to kind of tie some of these details, but we're really just going to be focusing more on what actually happened there. The fatal flaw, a toxic cycle. This moves into our final chapter of the story. Satoru has had a very successful time in this game as a leader, yet his fatal flaw is constantly simping over e-girls rather than focusing on being an R5 or even just enjoying the game. Having a situation where the first time it happened was questionable enough and nearly broke apart an alliance to be followed up by the nearly exact same issue, which does break apart the alliance for what it was once, it's insane. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results, which is seen directly in action here. Players receiving bipolar messages from both his R4 and R5, claims that NOIR is still as great as it was, that there are no internal issues whatsoever. If this was true, why is there a 100% new R4 team? Why are players making plans to migrate out? Why does nobody really want to join NOIR anymore? People have joined, to be clear. We did show that off in the migration. Why have so many people just flat out quit the game? That's an entirely different thing altogether, probably. It's a toxic environment to be in. Conclusion, ask yourself this. Would you want to show up to work every day, pay to work there, and then constantly talk down to as if you were nothing, now realize that this is not a job, it's a game, we all play this for fun to escape the real world or to just get out some competitive energy? Why put yourself in a position where you are not valued at all as a person, but rather just a number? Okay, that's a lot. So again, we're going to show you some more screenshots, right? Like I said, I'm not leaning one way or another, I'm only just sharing feedback. And I want to be very clear here as well, is that if Satoru, if Peak, if anyone else from NOIR, if you feel a similar way, if you feel like, oh no, this is not how it went down, I'm happy to show that off. I'm happy to have a conversation. Anyone can reach out to me at any point in time. Next one. This was a screenshot that was taken. We are going to be 100 left in NOIR from Satoru, but that 100 will be very effing strong as 100. Now, is that kind of going off of where they plan to maybe be at based on kind of post this season for what happened last season, and then kind of going into the pre-war phase during Home Kingdom prior to the new KVK starting right in, a week and a half? Probably was more or less set around there, I believe, from what was stated to me. And then we get into the next one here, which this one I think is going to be important because I want to show off some screenshots for me reaching out to Satoru and also reaching out to Peak to ask some questions, just to try and give some clarity, because again, these people were specifically mentioned. So this is me reaching out on December 2nd, that was 6 days ago. And I want to point out that most people know this because I state this in a number of videos when we were doing our big community questionnaires, and I would reach out to Satoru and I just never heard anything back. I used to talk to Satoru on, I guess, a normal basis, not every day, not to say anything to that degree, but to a point where if I asked something, I would usually get a response back in somewhat of a timely manner. And then obviously, when I had started covering NOIR, that basically stopped. And so keep in mind, the last 5 or 6 questions I've asked him up to this point, never got a response, right? My assumption or hope was that at least maybe they're being read, but just not responded to. And so you can see here, right, I said, hey, wanted to reach out as I may be covering NOIR in an upcoming video, and wanted to reach out before I do, in case you would like to comment and provide any clarity. I mentioned I'll wait 24 hours, and then I'll just move forward. Or I may move forward, right? So I asked, right, when NOIR lost behemoth races in recent seasons, was the activity drop apparent? What were the reasons in which players were zeroed in the kingdom? This is kind of a standard question, but I just always like to hear this from kind of like the head honcho, if you will, or the people that are there. Or in the management team, I should say. Did the Alliance implement any spending minimums, and if so, what were they and how much? Satoru saying no friends in war multiple times as a way of keeping things business and not personal was mentioned. Have you said this, and what did you mean by it or the context it was stated in? So that's an if so. Were any players ever kicked without notice from NOIR? How does NOIR's leadership team run? Council, one decision maker, other? Could you explain the system in as much detail as able? Probably should say as possible. And are you or have you ever been in a relationship with the player and are for Peak, i.e. romantic or more than friends? And again, this was because I haven't only heard this from one person. I've heard this from a couple people. And so I thought, okay, this is easy. He can just say no, yes, or it's complicated. I don't know. Is there like a yes, no, maybe so kind of option? I mean, again, so this was the answer I got. Now, let me be clear here. I sent this at 3:09 p.m. Eastern time. I get a response back within 2 hours, right? This has not happened in months. I mean, probably even longer than that. So I hear, leave NOIR and me alone. Stop creating drama. This game is dying, and you are doing some dumb shit talking mushrooms to get views in a minor game. You are crossing the line. So again, I just find it interesting how I ask a number of questions before this, don't get anything. And what's funny is I even asked a question about, I think for like the most hated and then the most loved player, I believe, and never heard anything back, right? Could have potentially said something like that at that time as well, right? That it was not right, or this is crossing the line, or it's not good pieces of content. Never said anything there. But then I get this. Oh, hang on. I don't think you guys can see that, right? Let me scoot this over. Apologies. You guys are probably like, well, what is Boss saying? Sorry. Just so focused when I was reading through the spreadsheet. I want to make sure my camera was in a good position there. But yeah, you guys can see here, right? That was said. Now, I go in game and I reach out to Peak. Because again, this was mentioned to me by a couple people. I just wanted to ask, right? Doesn't matter to me one way or the other. Hey, Peak, wanted to reach out regarding some information shared with me about members of the old leadership team in NOIR after you joined. Mentions of situations unfolding that caused rifts, along with claims that you and Satoru are in a relationship. I would love to hear from you on if there is any truth to this, and if anything you can provide to give clarity, if able. If easier, can DM me on Discord. Thank you for your time. The response I get back, which is, with all due respect, do you even play this game? So I find it very interesting when people immediately go to like a deflection answer, because it either speaks to a level of uncomfortability they have with either something that could be true or there's more to the story, or it's kind of more of a defense mechanism that you usually see instead of, for example, and we'll get to what I think probably a more appropriate answer would have been, but to me it always kind of feels like it's either something telling or it's just not the way that I would usually like to see members of leadership and management team kind of handle those things. And it kind of goes into one of the things that Guns would talk about, right? Where it's like, hey, are you PR trained? Which is now probably something I might use. I think it's pretty funny. How many units have you coded in the war? How many flags have you built? So again, right, notice the deflection. There's nothing that's really talking or answering immediately about the questions I asked. Are you the new producer for Gossip Girl? First off, I just want to point out I haven't seen Gossip Girl, but I've been getting ads for it on Netflix, and I think Blake Lively was in it, if that's right. I'm considering, because one of my favorite shows back then was The OC, for anyone who enjoyed that. I think it was like between that and like Laguna Beach were like the two competing ones, but I was more of an OC guy. I understand this game is dying and you need content, but you have lovely daughters. Oh, thank you so much. I think they're lovely too. Who need their daddy to spend more time with them rather than prying. So again, kind of going into the personal life attacks. Rather than prying into people's business on a game, I'd focus on real priorities. With that said, please leave NOIR and our members alone. We are all grown adults here. We play to de-stress. So, and then I just simply say thank you for your reply and I appreciate the time. And that's it. Now, personally, I think that if you're a member of leadership and you're getting asked questions, this is very similar to kind of having political responses, or, if you have... Now, keep in mind, I'm no form of paparazzi, so I'm not in people's face all the time. For the most part, it's one question and I'm done, right? Like, that's really the extent of it, right? I'm not over here trying to be TMZ and go in and just constantly keep messaging people, trying to join voice calls if they're in there. It's too much time, right? I'm going to ask you one thing. If you don't respond, that's cool. Deuces, I'm done. And now I may do a follow-up, but that's in different capacities. Not to say it's something like this, because again, I had only reached out to those players one time. And so I think when you look at how do you respond to something like this, one of the things is you could just say, hey, NASTi, hey, nice to see a message from you. I just want to give, I just want to state no comment for the moment. And that's it. Or you could just respond with no comment. Like, that's it. We don't need to kind of go into something like this. Now, could you make an argument to say that, okay, well, does this response somewhat speak to some of what we've heard already from this particular R4? Maybe. I mean, if you want to try and make those connections. I just don't know if I'm looking at this objectively, is this the kind of response that you would usually see, that you would hope to want to see from a member of management who is also supposed to be a facial and vocal extension of not only the leader, but of the alliance, and kind of holding yourself to a little bit of a higher standard. Again, some of the old R4s just gave me a no comment. They didn't give me, now again, I'm not asking if they're in a relationship with Satoru, etc. And obviously there was another question that was asked as well, so the focus was never just on one thing. But just wanted to point that out, right? I do think there's some opportunity here on kind of going into that PR trained moment that we had mentioned. Now, let's get into some alliance mails. So we're going to show you 3 mails, I believe, from NOIR. And there's a number of things that we'll probably talk about in here, and then I'll kind of leave it to you all, and would love to hear your thoughts. So first one was sent on December 5th. This was 3 days ago. Congratulations on our win last season, and welcome to all our new members. Excuse me. Oh, Lord. I didn't expect that further to come out. I've been drinking green juice. Apologies. About NOIR. This alliance is built around fighting and activity. And sorry, this was sent from Funkmonk. Sorry, I just want to say that. NOIR started from nothing and grew to be the best because of a reputation for dedicated fighters led by an extremely accomplished leader in Satoru. What to expect? That might be a little hard to read. NOIR is undergoing a reconstruction after many of our old family have decided to quit or start a different journey. So expect people to come and go during this transition period. Next one. This has always been expected and is a natural part of growth. Now, I don't know if this is... So this part is interesting where they said this has always been expected. Like, expected as in... Like, you're expecting people to quit? Like, you were expecting people to quit? I don't know if there was more there or if they just meant, like, that is kind of a natural thing and they just included that, right? And so, and is a natural part of growth. And if that's the case, I would argue that is true. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. People can quit. Things can happen in our own. They have to stop playing. People may migrate out. It's a normal thing. I think one of the things that we really aim to look a lot more at is retention and continued activity. So what is the rate of people that are joining versus the rate of people that are leaving? And I'm talking people that are active. And then what are those reasons for? It's different if it's, like if it's a reason because you have friends that are playing in another kingdom. That usually is kind of a go-to that I typically see for one of them, or maybe one of the more popular, which is, well, hey, maybe my friends finally just got into our season, so I can finally migrate there. I've heard that from a couple people. Or is it because of other reasons? And so again, I do think that some of that context there is important, and it's just not always as black and white. Please remember, you can stay or go without any hard feelings. We truly appreciate each of you. We strive for a family. I'm going to mention something that I wish was included here if we don't read it. We strive for a family atmosphere, but have high expectations of each member to ensure we reach our goals. NOIR's vision and ethos remains unchanged, and your new leadership team is committed to bringing NOIR back to the top by prioritizing our dedicated player base. We march on and will rise again. Enjoy your journey. One of the things I wish that they would have stated here, and maybe they've said this in another place, I'm only speaking about this mail, where they say, please remember you can stay or go without any hard feelings. We truly appreciate you. In addition to, it would be nice if they said, oh, well, we will assist you in migrating out. We won't zero you. We won't burn you. Or setting appropriate expectations, saying, for anyone that's looking, right, we'll have a deadline or something. Maybe they don't want to put that out because maybe they feel like that might be negative PR. But honestly, I think just being transparent and honest about how you do things. Again, maybe they did that in another mail. Maybe they did it on Discord. I'm only speaking to just if they wanted to add like one more sentence in there. That's something I almost would have liked to see. Next one. Now we're going to get into some of the farewells, right? Now, some of you might have read this one. There's actually two of these and a new one that was just shared with me. So we're going to read this one, and then I'm going to show you a new one here at the end as well. So this one is from Strange, saying, farewell, NOIR. Now, Strange has been a part of Nephisto's group for a while. Some of you may be familiar. I actually did an interview, kind of an ad hoc interview, if you will, with Strange and Nephisto a while back when Neph was there and he asked for Strange to join. Had a good conversation with Strange. I've never had anything bad to say, as I usually don't against anyone. But again, I really enjoyed the conversation that we had between her and Neph that joined. So saying, hey, NOIR. I know it's one of those messages. Sorry for adding to it and sending here since not all of us are in the new Discord. This past year has been such a journey for me and my group. We've had some amazing experiences, learned a lot, and made great memories. Now it's time for us to continue this adventure in a new home. Win or lose, the objective is to enjoy the game with friends and make new ones to have fun. That being said, after a lot of factors taken into consideration, a lot of thought, our group will be joining TFS once the server opens. That is massive. Now, I want to point this out because there is a little bit of context here where I've had conversations with Jason. I've talked to Tiny, probably a little bit more than Jason because I know he's probably a little bit busier in certain areas. But I've had a conversation with them. I've talked to a number of other people. Shout out to Drew from TSS, right? My spreadsheet homie, my brother from another mother. And Tiny and Jason have mentioned to me that, right, there are some things happening. There will be some big moves being made. And obviously some things have been shared with me, but again, if it's not public, I don't share it, right? That's part of, again, the level of respect and integrity and trust that people, because a lot of people have shared stuff with me and a lot more about the NOIR situation that I'm not going to be showing now, right? Unless something happens or more people come forward, or if it's like, oh, hey, yeah, this is okay, right? Some people have just said out of respect, hey, you know, don't share this stuff, but if you want to read it, you can. And it's often that I typically get a lot of stuff like that. But again, if you want to have good relationships with people, you have to be able to only show kind of stuff that they're okay with you showing. And again, I always ask for permission as well for anything that we are going to show. And on top of that, I always give people the opportunity to either rebuke or if they want to share their version as well, right, as we've already said. Okay, out of respect for the players staying and a year worth of sentiment, I let Satoru know our group is leaving with more than a month in advance to plan ahead. We had a good talk where I also let him know Nef's account will be staying since, as some of you noticed, he basically moved on from, and we'll go over to the next one, basically moved on from this game to another. Since I received a few comments regarding the reason and misinformation was circulating, I will clarify that his account staying has nothing to do with any animosity or whatever with our new home, and this was never mentioned in any talk. No drama, move on. I like that. Keep it classy. Just keep it pushing, pimping. And I want to point out, I may be sharing some stuff related to the Nef comment that they made that I haven't shared yet, and I'm kind of just sitting on. Also, some more stuff might come out from that. You know, maybe wait to see. And if you have any information or if you want to share anything, if you know anything about that, aside from what I might already know, right, I'm happy to hear as well. But again, looking to hopefully kind of do kind of I don't know if I want to say a professional, but just kind of an exit-ish form. We'll see. Next one. Each one from our group has sent their farewell if they want. I will not specify names since I feel it's not my news to share. Respect. I just wanted to say a huge thanks to those who made this game so much fun. You've all been a big part of this ride. Stay in touch. Much love, Strange. I actually think that this is like a well-written one where it's, hey, we're giving flowers to the Alliance. We're not really talking about anything that, we didn't agree with or kind of sharing any bad blood. I'm okay with constructive criticism, right? Because I think things could always be worded appropriately. But Strange just opted to keep it classy, political, and keep it pushing. So again, respect. Now, I'm going to show you another mail that was sent to me. And this one, again, because they don't mind, they told me I don't believe they mind having their name shared. So NOIR at the same time, NOIR not the same, right? This was sent on the 8th. So I believe this was sent today, but a little bit earlier. Hey, new and old members, new old NOIR members, I'm never one to sugarcoat anything. I will start by saying I truly hope all of you enjoy it here. Because since I moved over here 60 days ago, I have not. And I guess I should be clear too as well on this one, is that this was shared to me from someone from the Alliance mail. Not to say that it was this person, but someone had shared this to me. I just want to be very clear there. I have met great people, and out of respect for them, for the reason of you, and you know who you all are. You are the embarrassment of NOIR and game. You should just delete it. Damn, okay, it's getting hot and heavy now. Some of you are pay to play. Don't anyone tell you how to enjoy the game you play. Leadership has missed the mark on communication for fears of spies and leaving people left out of very important communication, resulting in the ineffective war tactics. Power focused has led to not being able to really build a community. Row has been disorganized and seems to have fallen apart. Enjoy the game and community is not something I see myself having here at NOIR. Having always an excuse on why something wasn't done feels like a job and always getting demands and not seeing results. There we go. Having always, here we go. Where is it? Was the results? Always have to talk to officers because leader doesn't know how to have a respectful conversations around expectations. Assuming certain members are spies and kicking them without proof because of past relations with leadership's squeeze. Rip, butterfly guy. Hope you enjoy Echo. Oh man, the subtle inclusions there, I should say. Kicking people due to activity, and when leadership is told they don't have ability to get the passports to move, are they being forced to quit, but not before being asked by leadership for logins to use account? Interesting. When asked if I was leaving by Sato, I raised these concerns and mentioned I wasn't planning to leave, and everything after has felt like a petty response to my concerns. NOIR once good, but in my opinion, not anymore. This is my formal notice by. Will miss some of you. Respectfully, Orca incoming. TFS on the right. Jeez. So yeah, that is pretty much where we're at for what is happening in NOIR. Is there more to come out? Will more people be leaving? Are the people that are coming into NOIR aware of what the current situation is there? Is that being transparently explained to them on either the environment they're coming into or just the state of affairs that they're coming into? Does the recruitment team maybe just not feel that that information is needed to be shared? Maybe it doesn't really impact the people that are coming in. And then what will happen with NOIR as we continue on their journey in Kingdom 5? That's it for me. I would love to hear your thoughts on anything anyone is willing to share. And as a last friendly reminder, if you are someone who has a different side to share and you would like to share, my platform is available. I'd love to hear from you. And I do want to obviously give a big shout out to those of you who have what some have stated, right, might be taking a chance on sharing information with me in hopes of, maybe or maybe not, having some form of retaliation, which again, I hope not. But I do want to thank you for taking the time. And like I said, I felt like we did a pretty good job covering this objectively, not really leaning in one way or the other, just kind of showing you what is being said, what's being talked about, and what people took the time to reach out and provide to me. That's it. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.